nobody black is surprised right now, but it still hurts nonetheless. It still stings, no matter how much you prepare yourself for the eventuality based on experience, based on time and time again. This country this country and its systems proving and showing that our lives don't matter to them. It's still a gut punch. And when I watched the proceedings and the announcement that one of the three officers involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor back in March was charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree, a 4th-degree felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison, although prison is not mandatory. The thing that struck me is not only in the initial proceeding, not only did they not say her name, they didn't so much as say her initials. The charge had nothing to do with her death. It was about wanton endangerment for shooting into other surrounding apartments. They completely ignored her death. So this was, in some ways, more insulting, in a weird way, more insulting than just a simple, hey, we didn't find any reason to bring charges against these officers. It's like, oh yeah, they did something wrong, but it had nothing to do with Breonna Taylor. Otherwise, they were doing their job. And I get so sick and tired, Mike, of when police shootings happen and police inevitably get off, going back to quoting W.E.B. Du Bois, that a system cannot fail those who it was never designed to protect. I get so sick and tired of going back to that. And I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, as I know you are. It wasn't a surprise, man, but it hurt nonetheless. When the proceedings were going on, I'm like, are they talking about a different case? Did they cut to this too early? Is this some other court proceedings that we were in on and not Breonna Taylor? Because there was no mention of this 26-year-old first responder's life who ironically, sadly, and tragically received no aid at the time of her death, Michael.
Right. Mike, I'm not going to be long on it. I'm not going to be long on it because of what you said. There's a deep sadness, and you know, there are many Black Americans who deal with the sadness and they cover it up. And so that's part of the reason some people are able to go day to day, because they compartmentalize or they repress some very raw feelings and some raw realities that are part of our society today. So I'm not gonna talk about it long, because I don't even know how I'm gonna react on the air, to tell you the truth. I'm just being 100% honest with you. Yeah, not a surprise. Not a surprise. And I think we got to get beyond the point, Mike, of trying to, of wagging our fingers at people or explaining the situation. The situation is clear. Yeah. It's clear. And it was clear long before you took your first breath and long before I took mine. You know, whether it was Frederick Douglass talking about it years ago or James Baldwin with the fire next time, I mean, on and on. There have been songs, there have been poems, there have been sermons, there have been protests. So I think we all should pretty much get it. That's not where I'm going with this. I think it really is a matter of conscience. It's a matter of humanity. And I know one of the slogans is "We're done dying." Since we're done dying, I think it is a time of dismantling some of the laws that exist that protect those who really should not be protected, those who have not done their jobs with conscience, done their jobs with integrity and principle. It is time to dismantle some of those laws. Kentucky has them. Many states have them. If you go and you investigate them, you say, well, that's not just. That's not fair. That's not how a democracy works. And so until we start looking at it beyond just a isolated incident, or, you know, it just happened this time, it was just a coincidence or whatever. No, until we start looking at it deeply, I'm going to continue to be in this situation. Let me tell you one thing. Just being completely honest. I used to live in an area, it's a pretty affluent area. The diversity in the area was, well, we got the Hollies.
Yeah.
Like we were you know what I'm saying? We were the diversity. Okay. So in this school district, I remember, you know, you had these coffees with the principal. So you have these coffees with the principal, and everybody talks about their concerns. And I remember this is right after Tamir Rice was shot in Cleveland on a playground with a gun that was out. He had a gun. There was a report he had a gun. Kid had a gun at the park. The gun was not real. Inexperienced officer comes in there just shooting and takes his life. So I'm at this coffee with the principal in a different neighborhood, and I'm thinking, what I'm hearing right now does not match up with what's going on in other parts of the country. I remember one parent breaking down in tears. You know why she was breaking down, Mike? I mean, this would be comical if it weren't so sad and true. She was breaking down because she wanted to know if the gluten-free options would be in the cafeteria this year like they were last year. She didn't see the gluten-free options. And, you know, that was like the big scandal. And I was thinking, what would happen in this community if a child was on a playground and got shot by a police officer and killed? That community would go crazy. They would go crazy. They wouldn't stand for it. This same community, they talk about gluten-free stuff. Yeah. And if there's a loss of life, they take it seriously. We're not taking it seriously enough. As you said off the top, we're not valued enough. And that's where we are. And until we address that, it's kind of like, where are we going? We're not really having an honest conversation.
Well, I said this before, you know, my humanity, your humanity, the people that look like us, our humanity is not a conversation. It's not up for discussion. It's not a debate. There are no two sides to whether or not we deserve to be treated, you know, like human beings, deserve to have the same rights and privileges as everybody else. But, you know, going back to Tamir Rice, you know the old saying, in America, a black man is a boy and a black boy is a man. And what bothers me about the job that these officers are doing, these charges of wanton endangerment in the first degree, these joke charges brought forth by the grand jury and delivered by Attorney General Daniel Cameron, you know, Mitch McConnell's protege. You know, all it does is condone and confirm that these officers did their job. Like, when it says to protect and serve, it should have a parenthetical that says, but not black people. You know, they're saying it's legal, and it's always legal. It's always justifiable. It's always rational. It's always understandable.
Yeah.
For officers to fear for their lives when in contact with black people, armed or unarmed. That narrative, that story, that line of thinking, it always plays. I feared for my life. He or she resisted. He or she disrespected us, or I didn't like the tone of voice, or I didn't like, you know, they didn't hold their hands in the proper position. They didn't follow instructions. When we've seen the alternative happen time and time again with white people taken alive when they are clearly threats to the officers and those around them. So add sleeping in your apartment. It was already on the list, but add sleeping in your apartment to the long list of things that we just can't do as black people in this country freely.
I mean, what would you do? What would you do if somebody comes into your apartment at midnight and you're a licensed gun owner?
The same thing.
You're licensed.
Fired off.
And you know context. Like, her boyfriend had the context of, hey, her ex-boyfriend might be coming in here to do something. It might be her ex-boyfriend at the door. And I just want to make sure this doesn't go crazy. So her boyfriend knew about the ex. The police knew about the ex, but think about this. They were sloppy. As I said to you last week when the settlement came down, $12 million settlement, this is like, you know, I kind of want to hit myself sometimes, Mike. I'm betrayed by journalistic training. I'm betrayed by, you know, growing up in the Midwest and being raised by sensible folk, being raised by folk who had common sense. So I keep trying to appeal to common sense, but I guess it doesn't matter. Common sense says, if you're in a job and this is a raid, you better have the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Your information better be current. You better not be acting off of stuff that just is no longer relevant. So the boyfriend did what he was supposed to do. Oh, I know her boyfriend's a threat. The ex-boyfriend's a threat. I'm going to be prepared. The police were sloppy. In addition to being murderous, they were sloppy across the board, and it cost the city of Louisville $12 million, and it cost Breonna Taylor her life. Sloppiness.
Well, let's talk about the boyfriend for a second, because the boyfriend, or even the boyfriend in the house, and even the ex-boyfriend, have been, again, used to justify and even vilify Breonna Taylor, because we're never innocent. There's a lot of talk about innocence until proven guilty. We're never innocent. See, we get charged, tried, convicted, and executed in a matter of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, or less, as the case may be. Whereas we can't so much, time and time again, we're denied an arrest, charges. Forget about even, I mean, it's a victory when it comes to justice for fill in the blank. It's a victory to even get to the point of a trial, let alone a possible conviction. And that's whether you're a police officer or some so-called neighborhood watchman or just vigilante who's got it out to go and hunt the nearest black person. Okay, so regardless, it's always a matter of, hey, you know what? The idea that we are naturally violent and out of control and need to be policed aggressively, if not eradicated, that always plays. It's always acceptable. And now, what you're going to see now is the shift to watching the reaction, because the conversation is always about the reaction. It's never about the root cause. So now we're going to have a conversation about the reaction in Louisville, because even this week we saw this come. Yeah. Not only did we see this coming just throughout our country's history, we saw it coming when they declared a state of emergency, when they implemented a citywide curfew, when they activated the National Guard, which only gets activated when it comes to black people responding to police brutality. And so now, because when people talk about peace, what they really mean is quiet, okay? It's certainly not talking about justice, they mean quiet.
Right.
And so now, whatever happens, and here's another quote I'm sick and tired of going back to, that the riot is the language of the unheard, but they still ain't hearing us. And so now it's going to be about, oh, look at these rioters, these peaceful protests. So think about just the circle. Think about think about how twisted that logic is. We beget state-sponsored violence on bodies of black and brown men and women. If you respond in any way other than, okay, no problem, keep doing what you're doing. If you respond by pushing back, then it's like, oh, you're being violent, so now we got to come in with militarized police, to add violence on top of violence. It's an endless cycle.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, it's a cycle. That's why I said I'm in a place of reflection. There's some quietness in here right now. And I think part of it is I'm just going to that next level and thinking of the strategy. I think protest is extremely effective. I think protest is a part of American history. Long before there was a Black Lives Matter, long before there was an MLK and a Malcolm X. I mean, years and years in this country, everything that has happened in this country, everything has been the result of protest. I'm looking at something and say, this should not be. I'm going to push back against it and create something else. So protest has its way. It is a very American thing. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. It's a very American thing. So, but maybe we need to add another layer of strategy here and start doing the so-called boring work. Okay, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? Boring is doing some work in the marbled hallways and these libraries and taking apart these laws that exist, that have existed for years, and looking at them in a 21st century context and saying, these laws do not serve us anymore, and we've got to tear these down. I keep saying it. Don't get caught up in the political response or the political framing of it, because politicians are self-serving too. All politicians, all of them. I'm not just talking about the Republicans, Democrats too. This is very self-serving. They'll take the temperature of what you're talking about, and they'll see how they can use it to their advantage. This is beyond a political conversation. This is about the people in the streets who are looking at something, who I am hopeful are fed up with it and are trying to make some steps, make some moves to kind of dismantle things that no longer serve a democracy.
Yeah, well,
that's all I can say about it. That's all I can say about it. I mean, like, this is, and we knew it. We knew it was coming. We knew it was coming, right?
Yeah,
All right.
it's still you prepare for it and you expect it, but just when you hear it, it seems like it's no matter how it's delivered, it's always delivered in a unique way, just to kind of
Yeah.
remind you
Yeah.
of our place,
That's right.
in this society. I mean, we talked before the show, man, and I was gonna say about democracy, um, whether it's the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or now the miscarriage of justice when it comes to Breonna Taylor, just all the more reason for us to march to the polls. It's now or never. You know what I mean? It's just that much more motivation, as if we needed it. That much more motivation to protest at the polls. But what I was going to say
And
also
everybody, and
was,
you got to, everybody's got to be called out too. Everybody's got to be called out. You got to look. See, because the easy thing, I said I was done with it, but here I am again.
I knew you had more. That's why I knew you had
know.
more. I knew you. I know you. I knew you had more.
I know. It's so easy, Mike, to just have it be far off. Hey, let's just look at our national politics. Let's look at the president. Let's look at the senators, and you just blame them.
Yeah.
And they're a part of it. They're complicit.
Oh no.
But
All politics, local politics.
Local politics. Ask those questions of local politicians. So where do you stand? Yep. Like these are, and I tell my students this all the time. I'll just give you a quick a story from the academy. So last semester, I was teaching, one of the courses I was teaching was a basic news writing and reporting course. And one of their assignments was to get a government story. And I remember a couple of the students saying, well, what if I go to the State House and they don't call me back, or what if they don't email me back? And I said, do you understand? Forget about the golden dome of this building. Forget about the beautiful architecture and the important people who walk in suits and expensive clothes. This is for the people, and we've lost sight of that. This is for the people. They are supposed to be serving you. They're supposed to be answering your questions. They're supposed to be answering your phone calls and your emails. It's unacceptable. They're not doing the job if they're not answering your questions. So we've got a part of this, and the part is ask people, where do you stand? I'm very concerned about this as a citizen. So you've been elected. What's your position on it?
Yeah. No, I mean, we waited over 6 months and I think 191 days for nothing.